For centuries, many have believed that spirits can communicate with us through dreams. And if you have a repeating dream, it could be because you're not catching an important message the first or second time around. And this is exactly what happened to a woman named June Ferris. And these dreams led her down the rabbit hole into a strange, unsolved murder mystery that has haunted a community for years. In August 1968, it all began. June, who lived with her family in Richmond, Virginia, began having a reoccurring dream about a house. The house was a big mansion, but it was odd because this home was unfamiliar to June. It wasn't one she had seen, recognized, or even stepped foot in. Every dream was the exact same. June said she was in an upstairs bedroom of this mansion. She would walk out into the hallway, then she would turn right, go down the back narrow staircase, go into the kitchen area, walk out through the kitchen door, and then outside onto the porch. And then, every time, she would wake up. In these dreams, June said she would always feel anxious, nervous, like something was about to happen that she should know about. And they would always end at that exact same point. As soon as she stepped foot onto that back porch, she didn't know where she was in the dream or what she was supposed to be doing there. June had this dream so often she knew the exact layout of this house, where every room was. And she said she had this reoccurring dream at least once a month for 4 years. In 1972, June and her family packed up and made a move to Orlando, Florida. Now, this is where things get really freaky. June had lived in Orlando for about 2 years when one day she was traveling through the small town of Claremont, Florida. She came upon a big Victorian mansion with a for sale sign in the front yard. This house instantly called to June. It was magnetic. There was something about it that felt so much like home to her, even though she had never seen it before. The mansion was striking. It sat in a quiet neighborhood just a few blocks from the downtown area. June had always loved that style of home, and she and her family were looking for a place to live. So she copied down the information on the sign and called up the realtor to set up a time for her to walk through. The day came for the tour, and June excitedly entered the home. And instantly, she got a really eerie feeling, like she had been there before. She walked around the first floor, then up the staircase, and began walking down the second floor hallway. June said it was like deja vu. She realized this was the house from her dreams. She said she already knew where every room was, every closet. She was familiar with the entire layout of the home. She would point and say, "Oh, that's a closet." And the realtor's like, "Wait, how did you know that?" Because this was long before the days you could browse a home online. June walked through the old mansion, knowing she had already been there dozens and dozens of times. And she said it didn't scare her. She wasn't weirded out by it. She felt like this was where she was supposed to be, like she had finally come home. After the tour, she knew she had to have the house. In March 1978, June, her husband, and their 3 children moved into the old Victorian from her dreams. And almost instantly, things got really spooky. As June's family was unpacking their belongings one of those first days, June's husband had his boat out on a trailer hitch. He had it propped up on a sawhorse stand and was going to leave it parked in the driveway. He had it evenly set out on the stand, then turned, walked back towards the house, when suddenly, it was like someone picked the trailer hitch up and dropped it to the ground. This huge boat moved on its own. He went back over, asking the kids if they had moved it, and they said no. This happened again a couple more times. The kids and June's husband watched in shock, asking themselves, what's going on here? Over the years, strange things continued in the home, and the family began to think that this house was haunted. They didn't find it scary either, rather fascinating. One night, June's daughter Robin, who was around 21 years old, who had been living at the house with her husband David, both fell asleep for the night. When in the early morning hours, David woke Robin up, asking her if she heard that sound. Robin woke up and heard a melody coming from the next room. The family had a shelf full of music boxes. She walked in there to find all of them were playing. Even scarier, she looked down to find that none of their switches were on. They were somehow playing while being turned off. This incident reassured Robin that their house was haunted. In 1985, June's daughter Lori began dating a man named Bob Vitter. When Bob first came to the house, he met the family, and the topic of ghosts came up. Lori, along with the rest of the family, told him that they believed their house was haunted. Bob said he wasn't a big believer in ghosts and shrugged it off. That same year, it was a few nights before Halloween. Bob and Lori were at the house, sitting on the couch watching TV, when suddenly, they heard the screen door to the back porch open and then slam shut. Lori said, must be my mom. But then they heard the sound of men's boots walking through the kitchen down the hallway. Bob said, that doesn't sound like your mom. The footsteps grew closer and closer into the very room the two were sitting in. Bob jumped up with the feeling that whatever it was now in the room with them. The sound of the footsteps continued down the hallway. Bob followed. He then watched as a door at the end of the hallway opened and shut on its own, and the sound of the footsteps faded into the distance. Bob was stunned. It was truly as if someone had walked through the back porch door straight past them. Not long after this, one afternoon, Robin was walking up the front stairway to head upstairs when she suddenly felt a frigid cold chill. She looked up to see the ghost of a man walk past her down the steps. She said he looked to be in his mid-30s, and within a few seconds, he disappeared. This was the first sighting of the home's entity. Up until that point, they had heard him, but not seen him. June's grandson, who lived at the house, would wake up to see the ghost of a man at the foot of his bed watching him sleep. This happened on numerous occasions. He was terrified by this and would scream and yell for his mom when he would see him. Robin eventually walked into the room one day and told the spirit, enough, leave her son alone. And after that, he never saw the ghost again. A few months after this, Bob was at the house upstairs getting ready to do some painting for the family. He opened up the attic door, began walking up the steps, when he too looked up and saw the entity, the same ghostly man. Then Bob said he felt a cold blast, smelled a musty smell, and this entity quickly passed through him down the steps. Bob, after hearing and now seeing the entity, was now a big believer in ghosts. Determined to find out more information, Bob went to the archives and began looking into the history of the Old Victorian. And what he found horrified him. He found a cluster of newspaper articles and quickly learned that the house the family was currently living in was the scene of a shocking murder just a few years before. The murder victim's name was John Harden, a prior owner of the home. 32-year-old John was shot in the home's driveway and died. Instantly, Bob connected John's age to the male presence the family had seen and heard in the home. He believed this could very well be the ghost that was haunting the old Victorian mansion. But who was John Harden? John grew up in Florida, and at 18 he married his high school sweetheart, a woman named Rita. The couple had 4 children and lived in Jacksonville, Florida. But after 14 years of marriage, John told his wife that he was going to be leaving for a while, but told her that he would be back. But Rita said John never came back. He left the family. A year or two later, John remarried, and with his second wife, moved to Claremont and bought the Old Victorian. The family had only lived there just under a year, when on March 22nd, 1975, John woke up in the middle of the night to the smell of smoke. He looked out of his second-story bedroom window to see that his truck was on fire. He ran out of his bedroom, down the second-floor hallway, down the back staircase, through the kitchen, and out the back porch door towards the driveway. If you're hearing this and saying, wait a second, this is the exact route that June would take in her dreams. John ran out to find his truck was engulfed in flames. He frantically tried to put it out, but John had no idea that someone was waiting in the bushes. This individual then shot John once in the chest with a shotgun from close range, and within the hour, John was dead. The suspected murder weapon was discovered by police in the bushes, and they also found the phone lines to the house had been cut before the murder. Police determined that the killer had deliberately set fire to John's truck to get him out of the house, where he or she was lying in wait. That is chilling. And no one was ever arrested or charged in John's murder. Investigators spoke to everyone connected to John, friends of his, family, neighbors, but they could never find a motive behind this. Notably, the Old Victorian mansion is located close to the boat ramps and riverfront district of Claremont. Some theorize that the killer simply strolled away from the home that night and onto a waiting boat, where they fled in the darkness. Murders are very infrequent in Claremont. When a homicide does take place, the success rate of solving it is almost 100%. But John's case remains a mystery. One special agent working the case said that it was one of the most difficult ones he had ever worked on. When June learned of what happened to John that night, in his route, his final run down the stairs out the back door, she recognized it from her dreams. It was the same path that she took. She said she felt like there was a link between the dreams and the crime, like maybe there was something she was supposed to see in those reoccurring dreams, to notice and possibly help solve the crime. But she never made it past that porch. She always woke up as soon as she made it outside. June believed that John was using the dreams to try and show what happened to him in those final moments of his life, and maybe help find his killer. Robin, June's daughter, felt the same way, as if John's ghost was always reminding the family that he was still there. His case was still unsolved. He had unfinished business. Years later in 1990, June and her family moved out of the old Victorian mansion. And not surprisingly, the family that moved in after, Ken and Donna Hartley, also believed that the house was haunted. Specifically, a male spirit that roamed the halls. Some of the family's guests said they had seen unusual entities and heard strange footsteps and other noises in the house. John's unsolved murder case was reopened by Lake County Sheriff's Office, and they stated they had several suspects, but not enough evidence to charge anyone in John's murder. So his case remains unsolved to this day, and his murderer, presumably a free man or woman, and it remains Claremont's only unsolved homicide. The Hartleys said the paranormal activity in the home went dormant and seemed to stop around 1992. So if you've ever had a reoccurring dream about a certain house, a place you have never been to, I've got some news for you. That may be your future home you're dreaming about. That house could be yours one day, maybe a year from now, maybe 10 years from now. And yeah, there could be a ghost attached to the place giving you those dreams, but hey, that's life. No place is perfect. If someone said, hey Avery, you can have this old Victorian mansion in Florida, but small detail, it is haunted and this ghost is going to give you pretty creepy dreams about his final moments on Earth, I would give it the old college try. I may run out screaming in the middle of the night, but at least I tried. It's the effort that counts. And in this case, his spirit never really did anything too crazy. He was always just walking around, getting them steps in, even in the afterlife. This story is so fascinating and so spooky because June was dreaming about this house years before she ever stepped foot in it. If you remember, she was in a different state, thousands of miles away, when the dreams began. If that doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what will. Not only was this a premonition of her living in the home, she was apparently already connecting to the spirit inside the house. And for longtime listeners, you know. This is far from the first case we've covered where someone will move into a home and a murder victim that lived there before will send the new resident dreams in an attempt to help solve their case. But I gotta know, what are your thoughts on this story? I always love getting your take. Have you ever experienced anything similar to this? Dreaming of a place you've never been or a person you've never met and wondering the significance of it all? It's a supernatural world we live in. Thanks so much for tuning in for this episode and subscribing to this channel. And share Avery After Dark with your friends, family, anyone that you know that loves mystery. Until next episode, I'm Avery Ross, and this is Avery After Dark.